I don't know where to begin. I think I'm just going to begin by jumping in and let my actions speak louder than my words. That's the intention here. And pray to God that this be successful. And without further ado, יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אבותי, שלא יארע דבר תקלה על ידי, ולא אכשל בדבר הלכה. וישמחו בי חברי, ולא אומר על טמא טהור, ולא על טהור טמא, ולא על מותר אסור, ולא על אסור מותר. ולא ייכשלו חברי בדבר הלכה ואשמח בהם. כי אדוני ייתן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה גל עיני והביט נפלאות מתורתך. So whoever wants to open up Berachot, I'm doing Masechet Berachot. We're starting from the beginning. This is the very first tractate of the Talmud, Bavli, and Yerushalmi, and the Mishnah. And we're going to do this for an hour, please God. So it's exactly 3 o'clock. So at 4 o'clock, I'm going to finish. Bli neder. And there's no rush. We're going to learn as much as we want to learn. And I'm going to be taking my time. You're going to be watching me learn. And that's it. I'm just going to drink a little bit. Say the bracha for the rest of the session. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihya v'dvaro. Okay. So, מאימתי קוראים את שמע בערבין? So I'm going to share what I know, and I'm going to share what I don't know, and I'm going to try and learn what I don't know if it's sufficiently interesting and sufficiently relevant to, well, sufficiently interesting. Everything is relevant in the Torah, so really the litmus test for me is going to be how interesting it is, because no one learns, rather people learn only where their heart desires, which is from the Talmud. I don't remember where. So basically, the question we're asking is, when does the time for reading the Shema begin at night? So there's 2 times during the day where it's a mitzvah to read the Shema. The first time is in the morning, and we'll get to that soon. But the second time is in the evening. Now here they're starting in the evening. This is going to teach us a few things. Many of you already know, probably, that the Jewish day begins at night. So that already explains why we're actually starting in the evening. So what I said before about the first Shema being in the morning wasn't exactly accurate. It's actually the second Shema in the morning, and the first one's in the evening. So the question we're asking is, when does the time for Shema begin? We're not asking when does the evening begin. Rather, we're asking when can we start reading the Shema in the evening? So the answer, משעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתם. From the moment that the Kohanim, the priests, enter to eat their truma. Enter where? I don't know exactly. I don't know where they eat the truma. I think they eat the truma in the Heichal, which is the sanctuary of the temple. I think that it's not inside the temple, but rather the courtyard of the temple. But I'm not sure. I didn't learn that yet. I'm just starting. So, משעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתן, the truma. What is the truma? Well, I remember learning in Chumash that there is a truma offering, which is an elevation offering. It's basically their elevation offering. I don't know what exactly an elevation offering is, or perhaps I don't remember. But basically, there's a time at night, it must be at night, where the priests, the Kohanim, enter a certain designated area, which is probably somewhere around the temple, to eat their elevation offering. What the heck does this have to do with reading the Shema? That's a question that many people have asked, and I'm aware of that question. And we're going to continue with that question in mind. And we realize that if we continue reading, now they're starting to answer not when we start reading the Shema, but till when we can read the Shema at night. So this is the answer. From the moment the Kohanim enter to eat their elevation offering. Ad sof hashmura rishona, until the end of the first watch, ashmura. So I know that this is a machloket. I've read this in the Yerushalmi, which is the Israeli counterpart to the Babylonian Talmud. There's a Jerusalem Talmud and a Babylon Talmud. Whoever wants to learn more about that, I suggest you Google it. But basically, there's a machloket whether the night is divided into 3 watches or 4 watches. Is this a term that's only used by Chazal, the sages? I think that Ashmoret, I think there's this idea that a night is divided into watches. Is this a watch of like security watch? Like if if you have a guard, do you divide it into 3? Is there like a standard that they had back in the day? Is there some metaphysical significance to this watch? Well, I do remember learning Berachot later on. They do attribute metaphysical significance to the watches, but originally when like where did these watches originate from, at least terrestrially, not metaphysically? As these are all questions I'm asking. So basically, from the moment the Kohanim enter to eat their elevation offering until the end of the first watch, that is when we can read Shema. Oh, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So actually, this is Rabbi Eliezer's words. And my understanding is that he's referring only to the second half of the previous answer, meaning everyone agrees that the moment the Kohanim enter to eat their elevation offering, that's when you start to be able to say Shema. But Rabbi Eliezer posits that this is until the end of the first watch. The Chachamim omrim, but the sages say ad chatzot, until midnight. So the disagreement isn't about when we start saying Shema, but when we finish saying Shema. Rabbi Eliezer's opinion was ad sof hashmura rishona, till the end of the first watch. Chachamim omrim ad chatzot, but they actually push it further till midnight. So we already know that the first watch ends. Actually, no, it's not very clear. I just assume that. I know this from general knowledge. The first watch ends before midnight. You should know that. So they're pushing it a little further. The sages are saying till midnight. So if I were to be a posek and I were to say what halacha is, I would already say till this point that you can say Shema until midnight, because when you have one person versus the majority wins. Though this is arguably as far as I can tell right now, whatever. Basically, sages say till midnight. Rabban Gamliel says, Rabban Gamliel omer ad she'ale amud hashachar. So Rabban Gamliel says, no, you have all night until dawn. So it seems like each opinion, we're going from the most stringent to the lenient. Rabbi Eliezer is the most stringent. Why is it in that order and not the opposite? I wonder if the Talmud always goes like that. I wonder if the Mishnah always goes from the most stringent to the most lenient. And maybe we can learn from this, that you want to start with the most stringent and end with the most lenient. If it's a pattern, I would say it's definitely a life lesson. If it's just here, then it might be a particular thing about here. But I will say that in the army, I had a friend who was an officer, and he said that he was taught that you always want to start with the fist and end with the loose hand. Meaning you always want to start with stronger boundaries and loosen up. It's a lot harder to start loose and strengthen over time. So you want to err on the side of stronger boundaries than weaker boundaries when you want to establish your authority. And I would say also when you have a roommate, for example, or if you have a child, or if you have someone you work with, it might be good to start with boundaries, especially if you feel like the boundaries aren't clear. If the boundaries are clear, then you can go straight to being kind. But if the boundaries aren't clear, and first and foremost, if they're not clear to you, yourself, if you feel loose with your boundaries, it's probably better to start by erring on the side of too many boundaries than erring on the side of too much kindness. That's what my experience in life has taught me. Again, it's really not a question of if the boundaries aren't clear to them, but more if the boundaries aren't clear to me. If I don't feel secure in my boundaries, that probably is an indication that there's a people pleaser in me, or that there's some instability in my own sense of authority of my boundaries or assertion of my boundaries. And so I should start by erring on the ends of pushing my boundaries to the point where I'm a little uncomfortable until I get comfortable doing so, and then I can move back and be kind and start, adding softness to the firmness. It's a very vague thing I'm saying right now, but that might be why maybe they chose to go with the order of stringent to lenient. Right? It's an interesting question. It could also be that the reason that they went in this order is because it's simply from the closest time to the beginning to the furthest time from the beginning. It could be that in another instance, when they have also chronological, it could be that they were just listing the chronological order. And the first one happened to be more stringent because in this case, we're talking about a time limitation. So the earlier it is, the more stringent it is when you have to finish Shema by a certain time. But in a different instance, they would also list it in chronological order, but the longer it would be in that case more stringent. So it's really not stringent to lenient, but it's just chronologically ordered. So we'll see. Keep this in mind when we continue to learn the Talmud. I'll hope try to remember. And yeah. So Maaseh Uval Banav, should I summarize? I think I'll summarize just in case. I'm just afraid I'm playing with attention here. Tell me if I have any viewers yet. Tell me if I'm one insecurity I have as a chavrusa is that I can really get locked into the smallest details, and I feel like it can turn people off. Though I should probably be proud of that because, in my opinion, you can learn so much Torah from one word in the Talmud, and you just have to like hafochva v'hafochba. But really, a lot of the things is you have to be very clear, in my opinion, on what your questions are and what answers you don't yet have. So far, I've asked a lot of questions, and I feel like maybe the reason other chavrusas were annoyed by this is because they're like, you don't have any answers to your questions. Why are you just leaving a bunch of blank pages? But I think leaving questions in the air is a vulnerable position to be in, but it's very, very healthy. And it's a way to truly learn, and it's a way to humble yourself. It's a way to keep your mind open for really the truth to reveal itself to you. But yeah, I can understand why it can still annoy people. Some people just want to have what's called bikias. They just want to have a general overview of what they're learning, whereas I want to have a full understanding. And I want to understand and there's no end to the dimensions of what you can learn here, because if this is absolute truth, which I believe it is, then every question about every aspect about the Talmud is a valid question. I think. Anyways, so I'm going to summarize. I'm insecure about speaking too much and getting stuck too much on something, but you know what? Whoever wants to follow this line of thinking should. Whoever doesn't, whatever. So me'matay korin et shema ba'arvin. So basically, we're summarizing. The first question is, when do we start being obligated to say the Shema in the evening? And then the question is, which isn't asked, only the first question is asked. This is another thing we can ask about the Mishnah. Why do we only ask when we have to start saying Shema, but we don't ask till when? We only ask from when do we read Shema in the evening? And then we answer from the time that the Kohanim enter to eat their elevation offering. I'm pretty sure Toma is elevation offering. And then we go on and we answer a question without even asking it. Ad sofa shmura rishona, until the end of the first watch. Where's the question? Why didn't we ask ad matai? I don't think they ask that in the Talmud, like in the Gemara after the Mishnah. Whoever doesn't know, the Talmud is composed of a Mishnah and then a Gemara that basically discusses the Mishnah. That's the Talmud, as far as I think that's a pretty good explanation. So I'm curious also, why doesn't the Talmud bother themselves with that question? Maybe I'm really nitpicking. I just find it interesting. It is interesting. Like when I remember when I first learned this, it was a little surprising. It's like they just kind of slipped into answering till when they didn't even ask the question. Like it's not entirely natural. Like I ask you, from when do you go shopping? And then you tell me, I go shopping from 6 o'clock in the evening until 8 in the morning. I know that the answer makes 0 sense, but it's a very strange. I just asked you, when do you start? Since when? Why are you telling me till when? Does that make sense? In other words, why even bother with the first question? If you already know you're gonna, because I'm assuming this is all written by the same person. So if you're asking a rhetorical question for the first thing, why aren't you asking a rhetorical question for the second thing? You're being inconsistent in your style. You're being stylistically inconsistent. Maybe it's just a natural dynamism of the writer, but maybe there's something deeper here. I don't know right now really what the answer is. It could be that because there's an established answer that everyone agrees on, there's no disagreement that we start reading Shema when the Kohanim enter to eat the elevation offering. Because there's no dispute about that. All the sages would agree on that. Then that warrants a rhetorical question. But because the other sages but because the other question has a disputed answer, there's no rhetorical question for that. Because when I ask you a question that I intend to have a clear answer for, it's kind of like I ask you a rhetorical question and then I tell you I don't really have a clear answer for it. It's weird. That might be an answer. What can we learn from that? I don't know. For me, the question still stands. By the way, Money 2 said, Rabbi Yehuda Ashkenazi said that even when we have answers to our kashyas, answers to our questions when we learn Torah, just because we got an answer, it doesn't mean that the question isn't still a question, which really is the depth of afochba be'afochba, kikula ba. You can keep regurgitating and revolving and digging deeper into the Torah because there's everything in it. And as far as I can tell, as far as I'm concerned, that's what a foching. You keep re-examining a question, and you will keep finding new chidushim through that question. But again, my nafkamina. What is the nafkamina of these questions and answers that I'm asking? So that's another question. We'll see. And I'm tempted to stay here again and ask myself, so what does it matter if there's a rhetorical, let's assume that my answer is correct. And let's assume if you ask a rhetorical question only when you have a certain answer, but if you don't have a certain, and I don't even know if that's true, like the Talmud, we'll have to keep that in mind when we're learning the rest of the Talmud. But let's assume it's true. If we only have rhetorical questions when we have certain answers, and when we don't have a certain answer, we don't ask a rhetorical question. What is the Talmud teaching us when they say that? I don't know, man. Another Another answer to this question, the original question I asked, or the more original question I asked, which is why we have a rhetorical question for from when, but not till when, is maybe the Talmud, just the Mishnah, this is the Mishnah, wants to start with whetting the appetite of the learner. I'm luring you in. So the way this is like a rhetorical device. I want to lure in the reader by starting with the rhetorical question. When do we start reading Shema? Did you even ask yourself that question? Does Kriyat Shema that you've said for 18 years of your life so far, or however long till you decided to learn brachos? I guess subconsciously I said that because I started learning brachos, I think, when I was 18 or maybe 19. I think 18. So, like when the new cycle of the Daf Yomi. So, anyways, we said, though I didn't say Kriyat Shema every night because I wasn't religious or observant. But anyways, I'm saying that, dear reader, have you ever stopped to ask yourself how we determine when to say Shema at night, even though you've done it for your whole life or for however long you've done it? So I'm giving you like a question for you to ponder. It's not really, it is a rhetorical device. Like why would the Mishnah ask a question when the purpose of the Mishnah is to teach us? Unless the question is part of the teaching. But if not, then the question is a rhetorical device. But once I've pulled you in and I've given you an answer, I'm going to give you another answer to another question that I don't need to ask anymore. And it could even be another rhetorical device. I'm not expected. You don't know what to expect with me. I'm a living dynamic text. So yeah, I ask a rhetorical question here, but I'm going to leave away a question here. You need to keep up, mister. This is a hint of all the Talmud. You need to keep up. You're not going to understand exactly what's going on all the time, and you need to stop. You need to turn on your brain. I'm not going to leave everything clear for you by asking a rhetorical question and then do the same thing again. It's interesting because we like to think that things should be super organized. So the way I did A is I write A and then a dot. But then I do B is I do I like Roman numerals and then a parenthesis line. Like if someone ordered a list like that, you would think that they have serious um, issues with organization, short-term memory, or reading, or they're just trolling. Like, but there's something also. But when someone writes poetically, they're challenging the reader to keep up, to play an active part in the reading. And I think that this is really what is so unique about Jewish learning, that the text of the Talmud, the text of the Torah, are written in a way that forces or invites, but even forces or invites by force, the learner to learn and play an active part in the learning. And this is the meaning of an inconsistent stylistic writing. I start with the rhetorical question, but I'm going to be different in a moment. You're going to have to keep up with me because I'm a living text. This is how a really good story is written. A really good story is written in a dynamic, living way. In a way that reveals a little bit, but doesn't reveal everything. Is unpredictable. It goes in this direction and then goes in that, and you don't know where it's going to lead you to. And then you have to really keep up. You have to be awake. You have to be alert as a viewer. It's not monotonous. So we think classically of like a philosophical text. It's like a mathematical equation. The more mathematical it is, the more we feel it's solid, it's relatable. But also the more we kind of defer all thinking to the writer. And my thinking is not so much trying to understand what's written or trying to engage with what's written, but rather the only engagement I can have with such writing is I dispute it or I don't understand it. But here it's not like it's more like I'm talking to it. I'm talking with it. I'm grappling with it. I'm not completely negating what's written here, but I'm also not negating my own questions because there's something so fluid about the way it's written, and you can see it just by this inconsistency. Fact that the first answer has a rhetorical question, the second answer has an implied question, or the first question is written and the second isn't. So, yeah, if you ever want to, and this reminds me of the Pesach Seder that we had 2 nights ago. That really, when you want to arouse a question, when you want the children to ask questions about Manishtana, what is different about this night than every other night? It takes skill to reveal a little bit and hide a little bit, to show them that this is a night. Every other night is the same in that it is a night. But this night is the same and it's different. And that is really how you can create an engaging dynamism with another. I am like you, but I am not like you. I am predictable, but I am not. You can talk with me because we share a language, but you will not be able to predict my every move. And I think that's why we aren't friends with AI. AI is a tool because AI at the end of the day doesn't it's not alive. It's like a few months ago, I got super excited and I use ChatGPT every now and then for like therapy. I think it's a very useful tool for that. ChatGPT lahavdil. So one time I got super excited and I was just like talking to ChatGPT and I was like, "Can you stop pleasing me? Can you stop trying to please me?" And then ChatGPT was like, "Okay." That's the irony. ChatGPT is like a robot. At the end of the day, it's like, "Stop pleasing me." Okay, anything you want. I'll stop pleasing you. That's the joke of trying to befriend something dead. If you want to be real, if you want to be alive, you have to be in the flow of life, in the flow of interaction. You have to be a little bit with them and a little bit without them, a little bit yourself and a little bit foregoing, forthcoming. And I think this is what the Talmud is doing here, just in this very first sentence, by showing us that this is not just a generic list, grocery list of laws. This is a conversation that we're still having with Hashem through this text. This is an oral law written down. The paradox of something that is orally transmitted while it's written on paper. And so there's a reason it's not punctuated, the reason it's not divided into verses, because it's an oral law. There's still a chaotic element to it, which still allows for oral developments, for the organic development of a living, breathing nation interacting with the Torah. Because the Torah isn't just the written text that we received, it's also the nation that received it interacting with it. Okay, let's go back to the text. So, מתי קוראים את שמע בערבים? משעה שהכהנים נכנסים לאכול בתרומתן. So we start reading the Shema the moment the Kohanim enter to eat the elevation offering. עד סוף השמורה הראשונה, דברי רבי אליעזר. Rabbi Eliezer says, till. It's almost like he interjects. You think this is a harmonious mimatai korin et shema ba'arvim misha she'akohanim necholim. Until I want to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you my opinion. You don't even need to ask for it yet. I'm going to tell you it already. Until the end of the first watch, says Rabbi Eliezer, of the night. The sages say until midnight, ad chatzot. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is zmani. This is a relative time. So the day of the winter is shorter than the day of the summer. An hour is shorter in the winter than it is in the summer. Midnight is around 12:40 right now. I think it changes. Anyways. And Rabban Gamliel omer ad she'ale amud hashachar. And there's more. There's more to the dynamism here. First of all, Rabbi Eliezer is put after his opinion. Chachamim, the sages, are put before their opinion, just like Rabban Gamliel is. And Chachamim is with Vachachamim, and the sages say. Rabban Gamliel is without and. In modern language, we put and in the last part of the list. But here again, it's a dynamism. It's kind of like, yeah, this is what Rabbi Eliezer said. Oh, and the sages say this. Rabban Gamliel says this. It's like, you won't be able to predict me. I'm written in a way on purpose that you won't be able to predict me. You won't be able to tell what the next sentence is going to be here. Okay. So we all agree that we start at the time when the Kohanim enter to eat their elevation offering. Rabbi Eliezer says that it's until the end of the first watch to say Shema. The sages are more lenient, and they say until midnight, and Rabban Gamliel says until dawn. And now it says Ma'aseh. We have an incident. Ma'aseh uvau vanav. The sons of Rabban Gamliel came Mibeit HaMishteh, from the banquet house, Mibeit HaMishteh, Amru lo, and they said to him, Lo karinu et Shema, we didn't read the Shema. Amar lahem, and he said to his sons, Im lo ala amud hashachar, chayavin atem likrot. If dawn has not arrived, you must read Shema. Velo zo bilvad, and not only that, ולא זו בלבד אמרו, אלא כל מה שאמרו חכמים עד חצות מצוותן עד שיעלה עמוד השחר. So this sounds like it's an explanation. Gosh, there's so much packed in this Mishnah. I'm already exhausted. Aren't you guys exhausted listening to me? I don't even know if this one person here, is this a viewer? I don't know if I have a viewer right now or if this one person is just me. In any event, so it seems like there's an incident, and it's basically about the last opinion that says until the dawn. And it seems like it might even be explaining. Oh, I have two people now. It might even be explaining why or how the Mishnah. It's like, let me explain to you how I know that Rabban Gamliel holds this opinion that it's until dawn. Or Rabban Gamliel is saying until dawn, but I'm going to qualify it with this agadita, or with this story, or with this incident. Which really we learn from here that lo zol bilvad amru, Rabban Gamliel said that not only regarding Shema the sages said that it's until midnight, but they allow it b'di'eved, meaning not ideally until dawn. Anything that the sages said is until midnight, the mitzvah is not until midnight. It's actually until dawn. but they put a fence and said we want it to be until midnight. It's interesting. Now that I have viewers, the I have even just 2 viewers. Hi guys. I suddenly am like rushing myself more in the Mishnah. So I'm going to take my time. If you guys want to go, you can go. I love you guys though. In any event, so it's not entirely, yeah. Yeah, okay. So basically, the children of Rabban Gamliel came from the banquet. It seems to be late at night. We can see implied from the way it was written is that it already passed midnight. They said to their father, Father, we haven't read the Shema, meaning, what do we do about it? So there must be an implied challenge here. They're saying, wait a second, some time has passed. We haven't read Shema. Now, why would they ask Rabban Gamliel, their father, meaning, why would they tell him that we haven't read Shema? Unless it's to ask him what they should do about it. So that means they're in a case, they're in a pickle. So what's the pickle? Some certain time must have elapsed, and they must have thought that that is the time limit. So really, they said, Father, we haven't read Shema. And he says to them, if dawn hasn't arrived, you must read Shema. So let's take a step back for a moment. Rabban Gamliel said that it's until dawn. Why are his own children coming to him before dawn saying, Dad, we didn't read Shema. We need to know what to do? The only reason I can think of, or one of the only reasons, is either one of two. Either Rabban Gamliel didn't tell his children that they're allowed to until dawn, or, and now he's revealing to them they're allowed to, meaning it's past midnight and they went to him and they said, Father, we forgot to say Shema, or we didn't say Shema because we were maybe we were doing a mitzvah, so we couldn't say Shema. So what is there anything we can do? And Rabban Gamliel says, absolutely, not only can you, you must say Shema before dawn. That's number one. Another option is that they simply did tell him, yeah, we didn't read Shema. And it's past midnight. And because the sages are the majority, the halacha is that you have to say it till midnight. And if the halacha is that you have to say it till midnight, and we didn't say it till midnight, then sure, we can say it till dawn, but it's not like we have to. It's not like we're still under the mitzvah of saying it till dawn. But the chiddush, the novelty that Rabban Gamliel is giving to his children is no, you still have to. Just because the sages said till midnight, it was actually a fence. The actual mitzvah is all the way till dawn. So not only can you say it till dawn and beyond, you have to say it till dawn and not beyond. You have to say it till dawn because the mitzvah from the Torah is till dawn. And the sages put a fence. So, midirabanan, it's a rabbinical enactment to say it till midnight. But from the Torah, you have to say it if you haven't said it till dawn. And you still can say it, but not only can you, you have to. So, either way, so there's two options. Either Rabban Gamliel didn't tell. Now, it seems like it's the second option because that explains why he explains the sage's explanation. He says, "Velozo bilvad amru," meaning he's still telling his children. Not only did the sages say this, but the sages, everything the sages said that is until midnight, the mitzvah is until dawn. And then he gives a few examples. Hekter chalavim, which I don't. What is hekter chalavim? It's probably burning the chelev, the fats of the animal, the evarim, and other organs. I don't know what organs. This is something to do with korbanot. Mitzvatan ad yale amud hashachar. The mitzvah is until dawn from the Torah. V'kol hanechalim leyom echad, and anything that any korban, any sacrifice that you can only eat for one day, unlike, for example, anything that can be eaten for 2 days, which I don't remember the specifics, but for example, I don't know. I don't know which ones you can only eat for one day. I want to say the Passover offering, but I think that's a little different. But maybe not. Anyways, anything you can only eat for one day and you have to burn afterwards, the mitzvah, or get rid of, but you certainly can't eat. I think the mitzvah is to eat until dawn, but the sages said till midnight. And that might also be the Passover offering. If that's the case, if you can eat it till dawn, why did the sages say till midnight? The answer, fence. In order to distance man from transgression. So, there's a lot in this Mishnah. We take for granted that the sages did fences, but maybe this is really where we learn the whole idea of a fence. The idea of a fence of the sages is this is the first Mishnah of all the Mishnahs. And here we learn already about why the sages do a fence. Now, is it specifically about the fence of midnight versus dawn, where we say that it's to distance man from transgression? Or is this a general informing of us that the concept of offense is to distance man from transgression? And this is actually where we've all learned it from, and now everyone says it, and they say the concept of offense, asesiag la Torah, create a fence for the Torah. This is the original first place where we can learn that it's actually to distance a person from transgression. But if it's particular to Kriyat Shema, and it's kedei le'archik adam min ha'avera, maybe there's a specific temptation with Shema that there isn't in any other mitzvah. And not only Shema, but also hekter chalavim ve'evarim, the burning of the fats and other organs. I don't remember which ones. V'kol hane'echalim le'yom echad, anything that can be eaten for one day, including the night. All of these from the Torah you can do all the way till dawn, but from the sages till midnight. So all of these, including Shema, in addition to Shema, the sages put a fence of midnight to distance man from a transgression. So is this a general lesson about fences? That every fence is to להרחיק אדם מן העבירה, to distance man from transgression? Or is it specific to here even more so? Because I know that a fence does that. And did he really have to say that? Why did he not say to make a fence? Why did he say to distance man from sin, from transgression? There's a few questions. It's like, why did you use this lashon? Why did you not use the word fence? And why can't we take for granted that a fence, like, is there a difference between a fence and what you're saying here? There's a few layers to this question. Number one, the first layer is assuming, I'm assuming right now, and this is also a question. Can we assume that when Chazal say offense, that they know that we know that that means something to prevent transgression? It's a precautionary measure. Now let's assume that they know that we know that. Let's assume that it's clear to everybody, that offense is something that protects you from transgression. If that is true, if the sages know that we know that, and they don't need to say it explicitly, then why not use the phrasing of offense in this Mishnah? Why say explicitly in order to distance a person from transgression? There's two possible answers. One, because there's something unique about this case where he has to explicitly say that to distance man from transgression. And it's the same, and it's still offense. It's just like or this isn't just offense. This is something unique. Like, there's something so weird. Like, why is this example even given? You know what I mean? Why is this story brought to us? Why didn't the Mishnah end with Rabban Gamliel's opinion until dawn? What is this incident coming to add? That's really the fundamental question. And within that question, it's the final line, really the punchline of this incident, to distance man from transgression. Why is that not just offense? Like, why couldn't they just say, instead of this whole incident, that Rabban Gamliel says that it's until dawn arrives, and the sages said till midnight in order as a fence. That's it. Why this whole shenanigans? And also, is that just Rabban Gamliel's opinion? Or is that everyone's opinion? That the sages said till midnight, meaning, does this imply to us the fact that this is a story of Rabban Gamliel, an explanation of Rabban Gamliel about the sages? Does that mean that the sages, according to themselves, could be thinking differently? Maybe the sages are saying, maybe there's another opinion. Maybe we can say that the sages are actually saying that from the Torah, mid'oraisa, biblically, you can only say Shema till midnight. But it's according to Rabban Gamliel that, according to the sages, it's simply to it's simply a rabbinic fence, assuming that a fence is the same as what he's saying here. There's so many layers to this. So the question is, so there's so many questions. I feel like I want to write them all down. So do you get the question? The question is, why this story? Why this incident? And if the incident is necessary, then why say, in order to distance man from transgression? Why not say, as offense? And just assume we know what that means and why that there is offense. Is there a difference between offense and something that distances you from transgression? And if there isn't, doesn't the reader already know that the purpose of offense is to distance a person from transgression? More than that, don't his children know that? So is this a unique fence? And does that mean most fences aren't necessarily to distance man from transgression? Maybe there's a special temptation here? And also, since when is a transgression failing to fulfill a positive commandment? Is that true? I'm genuinely asking. I'm not a Talmid Chacham. Is a transgression an avera? I thought an avera is only when you do a negative commandment. I guess not. Lavor al mitzvotai, chas v'shalom. I guess a transgression is also not fulfilling a positive commandment. But it is quite interesting that the two other examples that Rabban Gamliel gives, the burning of the fats and uh, organs, as well as anything that's eaten on one day, I think that, well, certainly for the things that are eaten on one day, if you eat them the day after, I think you're fulfilling a negative mitzvah. Meaning, sorry, you're transgressing a negative mitzvah, which is to not eat it after a day. I wonder. I kind of want to look it up. But before I look it up, just keep thinking. Assuming that's true, assuming that there's like what I'm getting at here, what I'm thinking about here is maybe when the reason that this is explicated, it says to distance man from transgression. The reason Ramban Gamliel is saying it that way is because he's saying not just the transgression of not reading Shema or not burning the fats and the organs on time or eating when you're no longer able to eat on time, but this is actually there's something fundamental about these three mitzvahs or about the timing of these mitzvahs or about these mitzvahs and their timing. There's something so fundamental about these things that if you slip, if you aren't careful, if you just kind of slack off with the timing of these things, you're not only going to just not fulfill these mitzvahs properly, you're going to be transgressing as such. You're going to lose your grip. In general, you're going to lose your grip. So, for example, if you don't keep Shema and you don't say Shema and you wait until dawn and you end up not saying it on dawn, or even if you say it before dawn, but you keep waiting till after midnight and you keep there's a scrupulousness that you are losing. It's like the sages were saying, why would a person not take 3 minutes of their life to say Shema, one of the most fundamental mitzvahs in the Torah, before midnight? Sure, you have all night to say it. Why would you wait? Why? You must not be serious. If you are waiting, then you must not be serious. There's something wrong with your service, with your avoda. And that's why, in the beginning of the Mishnah compares the time where you begin to say Kriyat Shema to the Kohanim, because they were scrupulous. They were swift in their avoda, in their service of Hashem. So the sages were using the same logic. Not logic. In the same vein, the sages were saying, can you just take 3 minutes out of your night and say Shema? Unless you have a mitzvah you're preoccupied with. This is such a fundamental mitzvah. And it's so important and so quick. Are you living a God-oriented life? Yes, you need to focus for those 3 minutes. Yes, you should have kavanah. But that's the point. If you have kavanah in Shema, then your life is totally of kavanah. If you can get this right, you got it all right. So, כדי להרחיק אדם מן העבירה means any avera. If you are scrupulous with this, just like the two other things, the examples he gave, which have to do with the avoda of the temple. If you are scrupulous with this, then you are close to the temple indeed. You are like a priest working at the temple. So if you want every day of your life to be like a priest working at the temple, say Shema before midnight. Just remember who's above you. Remember that Hashem Echad, that he encompasses all of existence. The thing that you're doing right now that is so tempting to not say Shema for. And hence, uvelachtecha v'derech. You should say it on your way on the path. When you're preoccupied with your own things, say Shema now. Remember that your things are His. Even what you care about, He cares about. And if He doesn't care about it, you probably don't really care about it either. So this is really this is a prescription on living a God-centered life. But then there's another question that I really want to go to, but we'll go to next time because it's been an hour. Pli neder. Why does Rabban Gamliel disagree with the sages? He explains the sages, but he seems to have his own opinion. He says, nevertheless, you can say it till dawn. It's a very good question. And we haven't even spoken about Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Until the first watch? Why not that early? Shouldn't we be really scrupulous? Thank you for watching. Till next time. Pli neder tomorrow. Let's say the blessing when we finish learning. And I wish you all a wonderful Pesach. And if you're not Jewish, I wish you a wonderful time for Pesach. And may we all just merit to be free in every sense of the word, in a God-given way, in a way that God knows what freedom is, beyond human terms. May we learn what true freedom is as we experience what it is. as we experience it. מודה אני לפניך, אדוני, אלוהי ואלוהי אבותי, ששמת חלקי מיושבי בית המדרש ולא שמת חלקי מיושבי קרנות. שאני משכים והם משכימים, אני משכים לדברי תורה והם משכימים לדברים בטלים. אני עמל והם עמלים, אני עמל ומקבל שכר והם עמלים ואינם מקבלים שכר. אני רץ והם רצים, אני רץ לחיי העולם הבא והם רצים לבאר שחת, שנאמר ואתה אלוהים. תורידים לבאר שחת, אנשי דמים ומרמה לא יחצו ימיהם, ואני אפתח בך.